Take two. After a little bit of technical difficulty, we're here with Dr. Frick, and you were telling me earlier, and now we're having to back up a little bit, but you entered into the Marine Corps.
David, let me begin at the beginning. As I mentioned, there were 17 of us, and I had the photograph that was in the Fort Worth paper at that time. 17 of us that went into the Marine Corps Reserve. Some of these people had been in before. They spent 2 weeks in California at camp. There were two of us that were just then joining up, and we went immediately to boot camp in San Diego, and where I served till November. Did my boot camp in the 1st Marine Corps Recruit Division, Platoon 53. We were on a platoon of that particular division at that time, and our DIs were, they were salty. They were World War II veterans, a lot of stripes and a lot of combat ribbons, and I think that the Marine Corps boot camp taught me obedience and discipline, which I hopefully still have to this day, and respect. And it was, shall we say, an experience that I'll not forget. I went from that to combat training and re-injured an old athletic injury that I'd had, and it was on my medical record. And I re-injured it 2 weeks from boarding ship to go overseas, and in combat training, and I was transferred to the Guard and Security Company, where I served the next 3 or 4 months, and then I was relieved of duty after a year in the Marine Corps, secondary to the athletic injury, service aggravation, and shall we say the future that it might behold. And that's my experience in regards to the Marine Corps. And yes.
But that's not the end of your service experience.
My service continued. I went to college and immediately enrolled at TCU. At that particular time, it was you just enrolled, you signed up, and you rolled. And I played baseball there and earned a books and tuition scholarship after my freshman year. Everybody had to play freshman ball at that time, and I re-injured my knee at the end of my sophomore year there, and it was operated on, and it continued to bother me a little bit, but I did participate in athletics there, baseball, through my senior year, and after that I had been accepted to dental school. Interesting enough, college was a new experience for me. Shall we say that I did not learn how to study in high school. I don't know how you or others feel about that, but it was an experience. I'm going to put this picture down. And I finally, when I did, I came out with a good grade point index and applied to dental school, and got accepted to Baylor Dental School. And I spent my 4 years in dental school, went into private practice, and during the private practice I was recruited by the Air Force Reserve. And I'm going to show the picture of me being sworn in there. Is it going to work?
Handsome looking devil.
And I had black hair at that time. It was a good experience. I practiced general dentistry for 2 or 3 years. Then I applied to and was accepted to oral surgery training in Houston. I spent 6 years in my residency plus a fellowship in Great Britain. And during that time, I had communicated with the Air Force Reserve to be put on hold as far as the 2 weeks that we were supposed to spend in summer. When I finished my residency, I was allowed to well, I was recruited and wound up going to Scott and White in Temple, and I started the oral surgery division there. At that particular time, they were not allowing people to take time off to go to reserve training or anything. It was this, I had to take vacation time at that time. I made my decision that I would not do that, and I diplomatically was discharged from the Marine Corps. My rank at that time was Major in the Air Force Reserve, and my rank in the when I was discharged from the Marine Corps was PFC. So there's considerable difference there.
Both a private and a major.
Well, the interesting thing that I found, and have you ever, I don't think there's a current movie out, The 12 Mighty Orphans. It has to do with Masonic Home in Fort Worth, and it brings the high school I went to, Poly, into it. And this is, that was 4 or 5 years before me, or maybe longer, but the people knew that they talk about, their picture was in the paper there, and also the coach and the homeboys, as we used to call them, was how we grew up. And it was a different era back then. And I think the pace was much slower, and there was not as many decisions to make in regards to what we do or what we don't do at that time.
Well, reflecting back just on your time there with the Marines and in the Air Force Reserve, were there particularly good or fun times, some things you look back on with great fondness?
I look back on the boot camp in the Marine Corps at my particular young age then, and how it established discipline and obedience to carrying out every day in your effort. And some of this I had, as far as I know, as far as athletics, it had done the same thing for me. But from that standpoint, I think that I look back on the Marine Corps more so than the Air Force Reserve, but both of them were interesting, and they offered different phases of service connection. And I admire every single person that has been in the service. I think it's good for kids. And to my knowledge, things are substantially different this day and age, and probably better from that respect.
So do you think that you got some of that discipline? You talked about your studies and needing to focus them a little more. Some of that came from the Marine Corps.
Absolutely. I don't feel I had any of that. And I guess a part of that is growing up too. And the guys I grew up with, you know, we were playing kick the can around the streets and all that type of stuff, not like the kids this day and age when they're punching buttons all the time. I don't have anything against the computer age we're in. We all have to accept it, and it's where we are, really, from that standpoint.
How about tough times? You look back, what was the toughest, or some of the toughest?
I think injuring my athletic injury, and from the standpoint of recovering, and from my standpoint of being discharged from the Marine Corps, I didn't think twice about it. I just immediately enrolled in college. I think the most difficult thing was learning how to study in college, and I think it's extremely beneficial in every respect, but I think people have to learn this. I think this day and age that kids probably are brought up doing more of this. And being a teacher yourself, you understand what I'm talking about there.
So one of the questions I always try to ask is what advice you might give to someone considering service in the military. Sounds like it's a great place to learn discipline.
For me, it was. And it's not that I was not from a home that did not practice that, but was part of growing up, and I think it was extremely important. And I so much admire everyone and have listened to your interviews and so much admire the individuals that have served service time. And every time I see an individual with a hat on, a baseball hat that says Vietnam or wherever, I tell them I really like that hat. When I see one with the Marine Corps, I say Semper Fi, man.
So we are in a church. Looking back, do you see the hand of God at work? Were there times when you felt especially close to God in boot camp?
I think as far as I'm concerned, he's involved with everything. And it's been a very important aspect of my life. And we had church services in boot camp, in the Marine Corps, and in our home, it is extremely part of our everyday living. I don't know if that's the correct answer or not.
That'll do. That'll do. Always want to be sure that we take a moment in these interviews to say thank you, that we appreciate your willingness to sign up, and you were ready to go and put your life on the line. So thank you very much for that, for all of us. Anything you want to especially tell folks?
Well, I don't really, yes, there would be one thing. I don't really think that that my time has been that important, but at that particular time, everybody was ready to go. And I'm talking about service-wise. And my family had been involved. My brother, who was 10 years older than myself, or 9 years, had been involved in campaigns in the Navy. He visited me while I was in boot camp with all his stripes and ribbons and everything. I'll never forget the DI came in to ask me, do you know a Swabie? Because nobody was supposed to visit you. And I told him my brother, and they allowed him to say hello to me and laugh at me. Anyway, I think it's good for young people, and I think it's part of discipline, part of growing up, and I am very proud of the fact that I have been involved where I was involved, and I admire individuals that have also served their time. How does that sound?
Thanks very much.
Thank you, David.